How many of you remember this video? This incident that took place, I think 2 weeks back. Those are personnel from the Nigerian Airforce Base. Those are personnel from the Nigerian Air Force. Well, they invaded the Ikeja disco office where they beat up. How many of you remember it? Okay. While some of you were excited about the activities of the soldiers, if we call them that, it's important to make this distinction that they are Air Force personnel, Nigerian Air Force personnel, not Nigerian Army personnel. So we need to make that distinction. I know many of you were excited that they did what they did because of the behavior of these schools. You know, they too, they have their problems, in all honesty. In fact, if you ask me, I would say that the discos, whether it is Ikeja Disco, Eco Disco, or AEDC, they have their issues. They probably behave even worse than this. But you see, rather than get excited, we must recognize something. You cannot correct illegality with another illegality. While it is true that most times these distribution companies actually engage in this sort of illegality, this particular one that is caught on camera should not just be allowed to slide. Maybe you don't know, this country will not work if the rule of law is not respected. The rule of law means that nobody is above the law. Not the police, not the army, not the Air Force, not DSS, nobody, not even the president. Now, some of you might argue and say, oh, this is Nigeria. Yes, this is Nigeria. If we do not take action against these kinds of action, then we'll continue to see a declining respect for rule of law in Nigeria. How many of you know that this singular act that these people engaged in, they broke 8 laws. 8 Nigerian laws. 8. 8 Nigerian laws. So, what are the offenses committed by these Air Force soldiers when they illegally invaded the premises of Ikeja Electric? They beat up the staff, they destroyed company properties, and carted away CCTV camera. Yes, that is what the staff of the Ikeja Electric are saying. Now, according to the Constitution of Nigeria and relevant laws, criminal code, penal code, the military code, whatever, they broke 8 laws. When soldiers illegally invade a private property or a private company's premises, assault staff, destroy properties, and cut away their CCTV cameras, they commit multiple offenses under Nigerian law. The relevant legal provisions include the 1999 Constitution as amended, the Criminal Code, the Penal Code, even the Armed Forces Act. What are the offenses? Number 1, criminal trespass. If you check the criminal code in section 349, you check the penal code in section 342, breaking and entering somebody's property unlawfully with intent to commit an offense or to intimidate or insult or annoy the occupant is a crime, is an offense, criminal trespass. And the punishment, well, you can say up to 1 year imprisonment or a fine. Number 2, assault and battery. Criminal Code sections 351 and 355, Penal Code sections 264 and 265, Assault involves unlawfully striking or inflicting harm on another person. Aggravated assault, if injuries are severe, attracts a harsher penalty. What are the punishments? Simple assault, up to 1 year imprisonment. Grievous harm, aggravated assault, up to 7 years imprisonment. Those laws exist in Nigeria. Offense number 3, malicious damage to property. Criminal Code Section 451, Penal Code Section 327. Willfully destroying or damaging another person's property is an offense in this country. Punishment up to 2 years imprisonment. If properties is valued at 50,000 or more, penalties may be harsher. You saw how the Air Force personnel were breaking and scattering and doing all that. That's damage to properties, malicious damage to property. It is an offense in this country. Yes. Offense number 4, armed robbery. If armed or threatened with weapons. Did you see those people with weapons? Did you see those Air Force personnel with weapons? Yes. Robbery and Firearms Special Provisions Act. Yeah, that's the law. Robbery and Firearms Special Provisions Act, Section 1. Robbery involving the use of firearm or violence. The punishment is death penalty if firearms are used. Life imprisonment if armed but no firearm was used. Taking the CCTV DVR of that private company, Ikeja Electric Company, right? While using or threatening with guns is armed robbery. And our Air Force personnel just committed that in broad daylight. The punishment is death penalty if firearm was used. Life imprisonment if armed but no firearm. Okay, nobody was shot. So at least we're looking at life imprisonment. Offense number 5, stealing. Cutting away the CCTV camera. Criminal Code Sections 390, Penal Code Sections 287. Taking another person's property dishonestly without consent. Punishment up to 3 years imprisonment. Abuse of office and official misconduct. That is the 6th offense. 1999 Constitution as amended Sections 15, subsection 5. Criminal Code Act Section 104. Penal Code Act Section 98. It is abuse of office when public officials, including soldiers, engage in corruption, abuse of power, and illegal action. Punishment, dismissal from service, imprisonment for up to 7 years. Offense number 7, conduct prejudicial to military discipline. The Armed Forces Act, Section 103, describes this as any act by a soldier that brings the military into disrepute or undermines law and order. Armed Forces Act, Section 103. Conduct prejudicial to military discipline. It's the 7th offense that those personnel of the Air Force Base, of the Nigerian Air Force, committed by invading Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company. What is the punishment? Court-martial and dismissal from service. Possible imprisonment if found guilty. Offense number 8. The 1999 Constitution, Sections 33, Sections 24, Sections 35, Sections 37, and Sections 43. Violation of fundamental human rights. Right to life and dignity was violated by the beating. Right to personal liberty by unlawfully detaining those people, those staff, right to private property, destroying the property and stealing the CCTV of those people. These are offenses that violate sections 33, 34, 35, 37, and 43 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Legal remedies: victims can sue for enforcement of fundamental rights under the Fundamental Rights Enforcement Procedure Rules 2009. So you see that the soldiers involved in such act can face criminal prosecution, court-martial, and civil lawsuits for violating multiple Nigerian laws, 8 of them. The affected Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company and their staff can seek justice through the police, through the military authorities, or the courts. Now, all the soldiers, I call them soldiers, but they are, for clarity, Air Force personnel that carried out this invasion, carried out the invasion under what? They carried out the invasion under the orders given to them by their superiors. Yes, by their superiors. So, could any of those soldiers, those personnel of the Air Force, Nigerian Air Force, have disobeyed the order to invade the private property when the order came from a superior officer? You know, in the army, they say, obey the last order. Could any of these soldiers be held accountable for their action when the order came from a superior officer? This is Nigeria. Yes, the soldier could and should have disobeyed the order if it was an unlawful order. Under Nigerian law and international military principles, soldiers are not bound to obey illegal orders, especially those that violate fundamental rights, criminal laws, or the Constitution. Even soldiers are not above the law. They are bound to disobey an order that is unlawful if those orders violate fundamental rights of citizens, they violate criminal laws, and they violate the Constitution. 3 conditions that were met by this particular invasion. A soldier can actually disobey an unlawful order based on 4 conditions. Number 1, 1999 Constitution, sections 36, subsection 8, and subsection 12. Says no one shall be punished for an act that is not defined as an offense under Nigerian law. Any order that leads to trespass, assault, destruction of property, or theft is illegal, and the soldiers were supposed not to obey that unlawful order. The Armed Forces Act, section 46. Soldiers must obey lawful orders but are not required to comply with manifestly unlawful orders. A soldier who follows an illegal order may be held personally liable for their actions. So for following that unlawful order, invading a private property, those soldiers, forget the superior officer that gave the order. The soldiers that carried out that unlawful order are liable to prosecution. Criminal Code Act, section 7 and 8. Even if acting under orders, a person is still responsible for their actions if the act is a crime. If a soldier knowingly participates in assault, malicious damage, or theft, they can be criminally prosecuted. Therefore, international military law, the Nuremberg Principle, number 4. The fact that a person acted pursuant to an order of his government or a superior does not relieve him from responsibility under international law. military personnel must exercise moral and legal judgment before executing an order. What are the consequences of obeying an unlawful order? Now, if a soldier follows an unlawful order, they may face court-martial under the Armed Forces Act, criminal prosecution for assault, destruction of property, or theft, civil liability if the victims can sue them personally and claim damages, dishonorable discharge from the military. Can a soldier refuse an unlawful order? Yes. Soldiers are trained to question and report unlawful orders, Nigerian military inclusive. The proper action would have been to seek clarification from a higher authority, report the order to a legal or human rights unit within the military, refuse to participate, and request reassignment. So the soldiers under this platoon, or not a battalion definitely, they had a duty to disobey the unlawful order to invade a private company because it was illegal. Following the order does not absolve them of criminal responsibility. Both the superior officer who gave the order and the soldiers who executed it should be held responsible. You say this is Nigeria. But if we continue to allow these kind of activities to slide, what happens is that it becomes norm, and it is not. These personnel of the Nigerian Air Force broke 8 Nigerian laws when they carried out this operation. The soldiers must be called to questions. Now, there are things that we can do. We are told that the commander or the commandant of the Air Force Base had made peace with the management of Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company. But what about this man that was brutalized? What about the properties that were destroyed? What about the CCTV, DVR that were carted away? What about the effect this has on Nigerians that are watching it? Look, I know we have our grievances against discourse, and we should also put things in effect that actually will capture this kind of evidence against them. They should have their day in court when they break the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But in this case, simply saying sorry is not enough. The military authorities should take action. This is a shame. Now, you can say this is Nigeria, nothing can happen. Something can happen. A lot of things can be done. We can write petitions to the appropriate authorities. We can write complaint to the Air Force, to the commander of that base, to the chief of air staff, to the chief of defense staff, to the minister of defense. We can write petitions to them. We can write petitions to the chairman, Senate Committee on Armed Forces, and chairman, House Committee on Armed Forces. We can write petition to these people, and we should do it. They shouldn't just come and say sorry and it's enough. Look, we have a lot of fantastic military officers. In fact, we are told that it was a fantastic army officer that came with his own troop that actually delivered them. It could have been worse than this. We cannot allow the activities of a few military persons to cast aspersion on the entire Nigerian army. You should not allow it. I know there is a sense of bloody civilians amongst you, but these kind of things should not be seen in public. And the particular soldiers that are involved, from the superior officer that gave the order and the soldiers that participated in this, they must be brought to book. Justice must be served. If not, we are weakening the rule of law in Nigeria. Those of you getting excited about this because of some bad experiences you have had with discos, I have had terrible experiences with Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company. But this is wrong. I took legal means to seek redress. This is purely wrong. And Nigerians should not keep quiet about it. Petitions can be written. If those petitions don't deliver anything, you can go to court and get an order of mandamus to force action against these people. And if they disobey, it will be contempt of court, and we can institute contempt of court proceedings against them. And if nothing is still done, we can get a special fiat to prosecute these particular officers. And if nothing is done, we can escalate the matter, report it to the different embassies, report it to international agencies, international criminal court. We can do all of these things. You think they're not effective? They are. And of course, we can always bring maximum media attention to it. The military of Nigeria, they are engaged in making a lot of sacrifices for us. This kind of action bring them into disrepute. It rubbishes the sacrifices they make for us, particularly the good ones amongst them. And for their sake and the sake of Nigeria as a country, we must take action. Because the rule of law is involved. Look at. Just look at. All the fantastic military personnel. Look at the way he's destroying that door. Look at the way he's destroying that door. For the sake of our men, uniformed men, these ones should be brought to justice.